This is the New Alliance Talk. Employment, Migration and Markets, the agenda for the next decade. Please welcome to the stage, Ali Aslan.
Right. Hello, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests, day one of the Hamburg Sustainability Conference started very, very strong. And of course, we're going to have a very strong ending to day one, at least as far as the on-stage discussions are concerned. This is actually a very, very important, very timely subject matter titled Employment, Migration and Markets, the agenda for the next decade. Clearly lots to talk about because geopolitical tensions and demographic shifts are reshaping global labor markets. And in this session, we will examine how employment, skills development, and talent mobility can be strategically leveraged as strategic resources for competitiveness and resilient growth. And I'm very much looking forward to a wonderful debate with outstanding speakers. But before we get started, very delighted to see amongst us none other than the German Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, who will hold a short keynote to set the stage for this important discussion. So, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Minister Radovan.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in the life of young people when they ask themselves two basic questions. Is there a place for me in the world of labor? And what can I do with my skills and strength? Everywhere in the world, millions of young people come to that point each year. They are ambitious and energetic. Yet, too often, the labor market around them doesn't offer enough openings that suit their skills and personalities. This is especially true in many countries of the Global South, where many young people enter the labor market every year. And we all know that at the same time, Germany and other aging societies are searching for qualified people to keep their economies running and to sustain public services. And in some sectors of the economy, this search is already a matter of great urgency. So I am convinced, thinking employment, migration, and markets together will be one of the central tasks of the coming decade. Doing so will benefit the people in the Global South and the Global North. Investing in education, skills, and employment is among the most effective investment that governments of the Global North and the Global South can make together. And it all starts with basic education. Millions of children and young people around the world still lack access to quality learning. Reading and writing are the foundations for a good job and a self-determined life. This also includes the skills and knowledge that are necessary for today's rapidly changing labor markets. Digitalization, automation, and the transition to climate-friendly economies and creating new occupations and new requirements. Education and training have to match the needs of companies and labor markets. Together with our partners in the Global South, Germany is working to provide training programs that equip young people for today's local as well as international labor markets. But to make labor mobility really work, proper education and training are not enough. Strong partnerships also here are required. Therefore, the German Ministry for Development and Economic Cooperation established the We Fair Skills Alliance in March. This alliance brings together actors from across the entire labor migration process, including employers, chambers and associations, trade unions, recruiters, and diaspora organizations. We want to connect and learn from one another to establish economically viable, ethical, and fair paths for labor mobility, benefiting Germany, partner countries, and workers alike. This triple win is the way to go for sustainable and successful labor migration. Ladies and gentlemen, governments can create the right policy frameworks. Multilateral institutions such as the World Bank can provide knowledge and finance, foster international cooperation, and help mobilize the private sector. And the private sector, the companies, can invest in training programs and digital solutions that address their needs. Each of us brings different strengths to the table, but only by working together can we develop solutions that reach beyond individual projects. That is why the cooperation between Germany, the World Bank Group, and companies such as SAP and many others is so important. In our joint communiqué, which we will sign right now, we are tackling exactly these aspects. It sets how to remove obstacles, regulatory barriers, limited access to finance, and qualifications that are difficult to compare across countries. It sets out how to bring public and private investment closer together, and it sets out how to recognize skills employment for what they are, the essential economic resource of our time, especially in countries with few natural resources. I am convinced that competitiveness and sustainable growth will depend more and more on whether people can gain skills they need and access good jobs. When we strengthen education, promote employment, and support fair skills migration, we invest in people. And we also invest in social stability, economic success, and shared prosperity. So let's make the investment together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Perhaps we can move towards the middle for just a moment, because as you pointed out, please, because you have pointed out correctly, of course, that there is a gap, if you will, between global skills and the labor. And of course, this is why we're now going to the signing moment, the communiqué that you have mentioned. And to sign the joint communiqué, it is my great pleasure to welcome three individuals on stage to join you. Here, first up, he's the Managing Director and Chief Knowledge Officer of the World Bank. Paschal Donohoe, ladies and gentlemen, is here. Yeah. Also, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO and Chairman of the Executive Board at SAP, Klein.
Hello. Hi.
And last but certainly not least, please give me a warm welcome to the Managing Director of the GIZ, Ingrid-Gabriela Hoven, ladies and gentlemen. And now, Minister.
Hello again.
This again, ladies and gentlemen, is the joint communiqué on closing the global skills and labor gap signed by Minister Radovan, the World Bank Group, SAP, and GIZ. Yes, take out your handies. This is a historic moment.
Gentlemen first.
One signature missing. And let's have a group photo of the four signatories. Please, in the middle. Please give him a hand. We can, I think.
After you, there you go.
Ja, ja.
There we go.
Die Minister in die Mitte, gerne. Komm, Paschal.
Photographers are ready. Wonderful. And to even embellish this photo, it is my great pleasure to add two more individuals to the photo. First up, the chair and founder of the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility, Dr. Vera Songwe, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome her. And ladies and gentlemen, last but certainly not least, the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Gilbert Houngbo, is here with us.
Sure.
A little bit of coordination needed. It is tight on stage.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Let's give them another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
I have to talk to you.
Minister Radovan, thank you for being here. Thank you for signing. And of course, Gilbert Houngbo, we will hear from you later on. Stay with me here on stage. Ingrid, if you may, please.
Yes, well, yeah.
And Vera, please join me here on stage for a discussion we will now have.
You want us to sit?
Yes, please, by all means.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful to have you all. Of course, we just heard the minister talk so eloquently about employment, migration, and markets. And now, of course, I want to hear from you. We want to hear from you about how we put these proposals into action. And if I'm starting with you, Paschal, we're talking about talent mobility, we're talking about skills, we're talking about economic partnerships. Those are the words that have already been mentioned here on stage. And the global competition of the future, I think it's well understood, is also about people skills. From your perspective, meaning, of course, from the World Bank's perspective, what is currently the biggest missing link that you see between skills development, employment, and economic growth?
So the coordination need that Minister Radovan referred to earlier on, a coordination need that we're aiming to make progress on by the signing of the memorandum. By that, what I mean is making sure that we have governments working with partners to work to develop the skills that the private sector needs, because too often we have people who are willing to work, but they don't have the skills that employers need, or we have employers who want to employ, but can't identify potential employees who also have the skills that are needed. And what the World Bank aims to do, in addition to the funding and financing role that we play in many countries, is look at what role we can play in working with public authorities and working with the private sector to try to play that coordination role. I saw a very good example of it recently in Mozambique. This is an economy that will have many skill and training needs in the future because of the development of the energy sector. And a role that we could play in Mozambique is working with the private sector, working with public authorities to look at how we can work better together to meet those future skill needs.
Yeah, thank you so much for laying out the vision of the World Bank Group and also for identifying where you still see shortages. Moving from the World Bank to the private sector, or rather to the business perspective, Christian Klein, where do you already see skills? If you're looking at your own company, but also beyond, where do you see skill shortages becoming actually a direct competitiveness issues for companies globally?
I mean, looking at SAP, obviously, I have a lot of software developers in the company. And the question is, how many software developers do you need when AI can code so well? And obviously, we see that we have now, it's our obligation first to our employees to reskill and enable them, but then also to engage with universities, because you need different job profiles. While definitely AI will have an impact on the workforce and some jobs will not exist anymore, there are other jobs, which are definitely of high need. And so it's both, but I see it from SAP itself to keep SAP competitive in the market, which is heavily shifting to AI. But when I look at my customers worldwide, I mean, also they need different skills to apply AI. And think about the global south. The agriculture matters, retail matters, and there people need to have the skills to apply AI in agriculture, in utilities, in retail. And that's, of course, what is also very important for us, because it's not enough to only develop great AI. When no one can apply AI in their jobs, I mean, it will not come into production. And that's why SAP has an obligation both to actually serve in-house for the right skills, but also making sure in the ecosystem, especially in the global south, also our customers and the community has the right skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And for an international company like SAP, of course, very much dependent on the global labor force, on skills coming in order to benefit your company and many others, of course. And this is where I want to bring you in, Vera Songwe, because many countries in the global south has been well established, have a very young and ambitious workforce, specifically in Africa, but not only. What, in your opinion, is preventing this demographic potential from fully coming into play, from transforming itself into scale, really?
No, I think, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be back at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference. I think two things. The first is really what the minister talked about in terms of matching the skills and the demand. And let me just take an example. Today we have a gap of about 3.5 million jobs a year that are needed in the cybersecurity space. And a cybersecurity attack that happened last year in the UK cost almost $1.2 billion, I would name and so there is huge value that could be had. In the University of Tanzania, University of Dodoma, there is a cybersecurity program that's going on. And the kids, the last exam, 200,000 students globally took the exam. Among the top 10, we had 6 African kids who passed. This is just to show you that if we can give the kids in universities on the continent in Africa the skills, they actually outperform the global average. And so what we really need today is in sectors like this one, which is a little bit the AI sector, but because AI is so democratized, we also have cybersecurity that is quite democratized. And so you need the skills both to perform the AI, but also to protect. And I think that it's a job that can be done at home, so you don't need migration. All the students need is, the technology to be able to study it, working with a couple of suppliers globally to do that. And I think these are the kinds of examples. These are concrete examples of real examples that are happening across the continent. And so what I think the students need is these kinds of programs that they can, governments can deploy, the private sector can deploy in country, and kids can stay in country and work abroad for good salaries, by the way.
Yeah, and we heard just Vera speak about the potential, really, of young and ambitious people, very much skilled, trying to make their way and trying to leave their imprint, if you will, on the workforce. And Ingrid Hoven, this is where I want to bring you in. Now, you need to create those jobs and economic opportunities, of course, for these people. What kind of global skills partnerships and delivery mechanisms are required that we're not yet deploying as of today?
Well, I think what we have possibly to promote in the future is really, as the minister was saying, a triple win opportunity. So in the past, when you try to recruit perhaps the best talents in Africa and Asia, and then they fuel the economy in Europe or in North America, then you see actually the impact of the brain drain. But there are different possibilities nowadays. Of course, due to the aging population that we see in some continents, it makes sense really to promote talented people from Africa, from the Near East, and let them work in labor markets in the global north. But what does it take that actually those economies don't fall back? I think we have to invest in country, build up the training systems, at the same time try to make people fit for actually labor mobility, which requires additional skills, language skills, etc. So if you build up the system at home, so people can decide whether they would stay at home and work at the national level, or whether they would like to become a partner in the global value chain with a big global company, and we provide them with the necessary skills. This really can be a win opportunity. The decisive factor actually is the demand has to be identified with the private sector. We can't simply train people, and then we hope that they get actually be hired. Now, I think the successful models that we have implemented also on behalf of the German government in Egypt, in Nigeria, in Tunisia, in Morocco, depart actually from a very, very strong partnership with the private sector, where the private sector actually at home in Germany or in Europe and at the country level really has a skin in the game.
Yeah.
And then it works.
Yeah, they really have skin in the game, the private sector. All the forces need to combine and join forces in order for the skills and competitiveness to lead to economic transformation, of course. And the World Bank Group, I know, of course, has numerous studies on these issues. And this is why, Paschal, I want to bring you in here again and ask you, what, in your opinion, are the most important investments that governments need to prioritize today if they actually want the skill development to become a real driver of competitiveness? What do the numbers say?
Well, look, it continues to be the case that the investment that you make at primary level in particular in ensuring that young girls and boys begin their educational journey with the right skills from a literacy point of view, from a mathematical point of view, they continue to be the critical investments. But what we are increasingly recognizing in our work with regard to education policy is also the need to give additional focus with regard to the skills agenda. And by skills, I mean those particular educational qualifications that are also rooted in what the private sector needs, in ensuring that where jobs are available, where jobs are being created, that those who are leaving our educational system are doing so with skills that are appropriate to the employment opportunity and are indeed in a position where the curricula, where the skills agenda is being transparently and openly influenced by what the needs of employers are. And then just finally on employers, it's not just very large employers that can play a critical role with regard to this. If we look at agriculture, for example, which will be critical to how we meet the job needs of many parts of the world, again, ensuring that those who are leaving university, leaving schools, have the skills that are needed to allow them to transition from maybe subsistence to a surplus form of farming, again, is a really relevant example of what the skills agenda can look like.
Yeah, thank you so much for providing a very specific example as far as the skills, competitiveness, and economic transformation come together in order to come to full fruition. Christian Klein, you've already mentioned in your first answer how radically AI has influenced the type of skills that companies such as yours need so desperately these days. In your opinion, looking around, do governments and systems, specifically education systems, keeping pace with that demand and those changes?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in some countries more than in others. So but you also have to, watch out. I mean, I guess no one can solve the challenge alone of bringing young people into jobs. And, besides my job at SAP, I'm also the chairman of Generation Unlimited. Here's Kevin and Nadi. And this Generation Unlimited is an initiative powered by UNICEF. And we are bringing leaders from the private sector and the public sector together. And the good thing is about Generation Unlimited that here we can really get stuff done. We are not only having a nice vision of bringing millions of young people into jobs. I mean, we also get the job done. And you see that, there are leaders coming together from countries who know exactly what young people, what the economy needs in this global south. We can come in from the private sector and can bring in not only money, but also the practical expertise on how to upskill young people on how to apply AI in agriculture, helping young entrepreneurs to grow their business with AI. And you see, when this happens, private and public sector coming together, universities are getting pulled in, this is where I guess this is for me the winning formula. So no one can actually solve the problem alone.
Yeah, it's certainly a task for the entire universe.
Yeah, and to your point, which country works it better? It really also depends on the platform the country giving us itself. When we are welcome with open arms, I can remember a lot of projects we won in Africa, super successful, because also the government invited us to come, with our expertise, obviously with funding. So it's also about, do you find the right platform to help in the global scene?
Yeah, of course, the visions have to match at the end of the day with the country and, of course, the company that is coming in to provide those services. And we're talking about skills and competitiveness, Vera, Songwe, and we're in Germany, we're in Europe, a continent and a country that is specifically being linked to demographic challenges, meaning the generations are getting older, not much youth is coming forth. That's very different for the Global South in many regards. And so the question then is, how can those countries with a growing young population turn demographic growth into an economic advantage rather than it ending up being a burden?
And that's a good question. I think twofold. If you go to China, which has 1 billion something people, we have what we now call white factories, which essentially are factories with no people in them. But behind the factories with no people is a lot of scientific research. And I think what we also need in the developing countries, I think the Global South is a little bit of a half word, so I prefer to use developing and emerging countries as opposed to that. I think two things are happening on the continent. Today, again, with AI and with technology, an incredible amount of jobs that can be created. What we need are, first, governments need to liberalize the IT sector, because if we have connectivity that is as fast as connectivity in the developed world, you can have a lot faster technology. But more importantly, because it is a global world, we've just lived the last week in Europe with the heat waves that are that high. I think at some point, labor, 10 years ago, labor in Asia was providing goods to the rest of the world. I think in 10 years, labor in Africa will provide goods to the rest of the world. So what we need to do is skill that labor so that that labor can actually drive that demand and supply. And so if we can skill them, make sure that we bring in the right partnerships. I think that today we see many of the automobile companies from the East coming into Germany. But a lot of the parts for those automobile companies are coming from Africa. If we could build a supply chain that actually creates jobs, the lithium, the cobalt, the iron ore is all coming from Africa. We need to begin to add value in Africa so that as we move that value into Germany to create the automobiles with knowledge from someplace else, there is actually global labor demand. And I must say that labor demand is not just an African problem. It is a German problem, it is an American problem, and it is certainly, I come from Cameroon, a Cameroonian problem. We cannot solve it as one bloc against the other. What the Europeans have today is enough resources for R&D. What Africa has is the human capacity. And so if we bring those two together, my sense is we can create more jobs much faster for the global common.
Certainly. It's not a one-size-fits-all problem, as you pointed out correctly. Each country has its own recipes. Each country has its own challenges. I think that's very well understood. But there are commonalities. And as far as the heat wave is concerned, judging by the temperature here, it still continues. But that's a different story. Ingrid, we're talking about skills development, of course, how to better integrate them into a broader economic strategy. Judging by your experience, you're also traveling a lot in your capacity as the leader of the GIZ. What are you seeing? What are some of those winning broader economic strategies that do lead to sustainable jobs and value creation?
But certainly we can count on a number of very best practices. For instance, in Egypt, we were working with Siemens Energy. We have trained 7,000 people and built up a TVET system that really addresses the new needs and the new demands in the renewable energy sector. So many pilots with Schneider Electric in Vietnam and so forth. But I think we now have to try to find a way through broader alliances and partnerships really to create the ecosystems that are needed. First point that is important, we need a whole-of-government approach. So if the Labour Ministry continues to do its work, and then this is being disconnected from industrial transformation planning, sitting perhaps with the Ministry of Finance, we are already missing to connect the dots. And the same applies for possibly the countries that may receive workforce members from developing and emerging economies, because then again, in Europe, you have like a ministry dealing with certain regulations, and then you have the Chamber of Commerce. They are actually going to certify the trainings, et cetera, and then you have the Development Cooperation Ministry who's investing heavily into building up education and TVET system in countries themselves. So how to bring those different dots together so that you really create an ecosystem that delivers to people and to the economies. And this is, I think, now the next step that those new partnerships have to make sure. Additionally, quite frankly, to be honest, of course, we would expect that receiving countries as well as industries that they pay and they have a financial contribution in those partnerships. But it won't go into the right direction without any additional public spending. And we have to recognize that actually spending in human development, these are not recurrent costs in budget, but this is really an investment into the future of those economies and also the ones that are receiving your skilled labor. So additional investment in building up those ecosystems will be needed. And unless we do this in a strategic way, we will end up with huge gaps in the workforce that we need for the future transformation. Last year, we have finished a study on behalf of the German government that shows how much potential lies actually in the new economy, in the industrial transformation. New jobs are going to be created in e-mobility, in renewable energy, in adaptive agriculture. So there are huge opportunities that we can seize, but unless we start now to equip the young population for the future, we are going to miss those opportunities.
Yeah, there's certainly no time to waste. I think that's something that we're all in agreement of. And as far as no time to wait is concerned, this session is, of course, also focusing on migration. And that's the part I want to zoom in here for a moment, Vera, because we've already talked about demographic challenges here. Other countries are having the reversed issue, perhaps, but many countries also worry about losing talent abroad. It's one thing to educate them at home and then losing them to other countries such as Germany. So, in your opinion, how can international mobility become a source of knowledge transfer and economic opportunity rather than a zero-sum game, rather than a loss to the country that is actually putting those skills into place for the young people?
I used to live in the Philippines. The Philippines is the global exporter of childcare, healthcare, to the GCCs and to the rest of East Asia in particular. And I think what was able to happen and what we see is that with that kind of migration, well organized, I think the Philippine government is the most organized in terms of external service workers. You get remittances back, right? And so those remittances, if one can make sure that your macroeconomy is well managed so that you're not suffering from huge inflation and so the value of the resources are being depleted, you have huge growth. I think we see the same thing more or less on the remittances side in Egypt, in Kenya, and so it's very common for us to talk about the brain drain on one hand and then to talk about the remittances on the other hand. Remittances today are much higher than all development aid combined. So I don't think it's an either or. I think we need more remittances. It's important. I think we need, after that, then to organize ourselves in such a way that those remittances find a way where they can then be channeled into investable projects back home. And so the brain drain actually ends up a lot of times in a reverse brain sort of education. If we look at what's happening in Kenya, there's a lot of, used to be the former head of Google who has come back and is driving the whole IT system in Kenya today. And so Kenya today is one of the best sort of connected countries in the world. But that's because he came from Google. You look at the young guy from NVIDIA who is now running GPUs and educating local Africans on how to write compute in their local languages. It's because he worked in NVIDIA and he's now come back home. So I think that if we have those, then we can very quickly close the gap in terms of, if we had to wait just for some non-African to come back from NVIDIA to teach us how to use compute, we will wait 10 years. He came back in 3, and now in a year's time, we're investing in GPUs and rolling them out. So my sense is, I think, well-organized and well-directed, migration is a good thing because it sort of shares the global knowledge and is well-distributed. Our leaders need to provide the resources. They need to make sure that the environment and the governance systems within which this can thrive are well organized.
Yeah, migration is a net value, if I understand it correctly, says Vera. Songwe, and brain drain doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Quite on the contrary, it can benefit the countries if these skilled individuals come back. Want to get your quick assessment as well on that from each of your own perspectives, Ingrid and then Paschal and Christian, each in their own view. We're talking about brain drain being a win-win at the end of the day.
Well, actually, I can very much agree with Vera's points. I mean, first, actually, when you invest into the national educational system so that you actually not only recruit the workforce, but you actually add to the skilled labor force at home, then you have a win-win situation. And this is what actually these new global skills partnerships are about and the new alliances that the minister describes. It's not simply pulling people out of the economy, but investing into a new and a reinforced educational system that would deliver to the national labor force as well then to a global one. Second point, when it comes to remittances, very much agree, very important income source. But certainly we also have to make sure that not only, and this is a lifeline, a social security system for those societies, but that we also try to incentivize investments by remittances at home, at the country level. And then again, we create a win-win opportunity because we reinforce economic activity at home. So these two additional points, and this is doable. We have sufficient examples.
Christian Klein, where do you come in as a company? Well, what hurdles are you facing? What are the biggest bureaucratic hurdles perhaps you're facing in bringing in talent from abroad?
I mean, as always in life, listening is very important, private sector and public sector. When I would not listen to the many young leaders we sometimes welcome in our Gen U board, talking to me what the young people really need in this country, I would be so arrogant, and because then I would probably, offer university trainings which are not applying to the local job market and what the country needs. And vice versa, it's the same. When I'm getting overburdened to apply AI in a certain country and the regulation is so high, then obviously it will also not has a lasting impact on the community and the society there. But I can only agree. That's why, private, public sector, it's also at the end really about this teamwork. I mean, what do I know about what is needed in the local market? I said, Gen U. I mean, we need these platforms to understand better local needs. And then when we join forces, we get something done. But obviously, over-regulation and these kind of things, they are clearly not helping. And that's sometimes when it comes to AI, the number one blocker, not only in countries, in Africa and Latin, sometimes also in Germany.
well understood and received that specific remark.
You don't have to apologize.
Paschal, to wrap up the migration round, if you will, we've already talked about how we can turn migration into a source of shared growth rather than imbalance. Again, what do the studies, what do the World Bank studies indicate towards?
It highlights the importance of the skills agenda and recognizing the need to ensure that the long-standing focus on education that happens within our schools all over the world, but of course within the World Bank Group, we're particularly conscious of emerging and developing economies, that is accompanied now by a higher focus on where we are with skills. That can best be done in a local or national setting to ensure that local people can access in a way that's practical for them the skill development that they need, so that if they do decide that they do want to leave their own country, they do so with skills. On the other hand, we know that by developing skills within a country, that of itself increases the chances of jobs being found locally as well. So all paths just lead back to that importance of the skills agenda, which is why it's so great to see it getting such focus here in the Sustainability Conference, and to see the alignment across the different public authorities and the private sector in recognising the importance of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the value of migration is very well understood and explained by all of you if applied correctly and justly. Being very mindful of the time, I do want to do a very, very quick closing round amongst the four of you, 60 seconds each, perhaps my request for a very short answer. And that is basically, what are we leaving the audience with here today? What is you've imparted a lot of valuable sessions and very valuable lessons here already. Christian Klein, starting with you perhaps. What is the one concrete step that business leaders should take now, advice to business leaders perhaps, to the business community, to the business leaders in the audience? What is the one element they should take away from this conversation?
I mean, first of all, as a business leader, when you travel the world, you also have a responsibility for the communities you are doing business in. So that's the number one. You should never forget, to also care about the communities you are also making money in. Second is about really taking the time invest. It's not always easy for business leaders to invest time. So, Kevin, you are nodding. Also, my calendar is full, but, it's then a time invest to engage with institutions like Generation Unlimited, like the GIZ, to solve, because no one can solve the problem together. And then the third one is really, when you're going in, never forget, it's not only about the money, it's also about, the practical experience, the use cases, and really bringing the assets together. So that would be my advice to the business leaders.
Thank you. We're very well aware that your calendar is full, and that's why we're very appreciative.
Not only mine, but, I know how this works in the business community.
No, we're very...
But that should not also be an excuse,
of course
for everyone to not engage. Yeah?
No, I was actually just going to say, and we're very appreciative that you took the time to be here with us. That's for certain, for this very important discussion. Ingrid, Hoven, based on your experience, 60 seconds, what is one practical lesson that we already know and are not applying globally quite yet about migration and employment?
I think we have to reshift our attention. We spoke a lot about infrastructure gaps over the last couple of years, financial gaps. I think we have to reshift our attention and take a much more people-centered approach to create the jobs and the opportunities that people need. I think our transformation into a more climate-friendly and resilient future will depend on whether we have the skilled labor force, the academia, and the talents in place to really make this transformation a success. And this can only be done in partnership. You already, Mr. Klein, you explained it. This can't be done alone by the public sector, nor by the private sector. We have to bring all the stakeholders together. And I think we are at the point to create those platforms strongly.
And that, of course, is what the Hamburg Sustainability Conference is here to bring together the stakeholders in order to forge those important partnerships. Vera, Songwe, what is one untapped opportunity the world is still underestimating in the context of migration and employment skills?
I think it's just the amazing innovation that sits within this continent and that we have not yet explored. And if we can find a way of... So R&D research in the developing world is less than 1% of GDP generally. But each of those students, each of those universities is sitting on amazing research that can solve local problems with local solutions. And if we can provide the governance environment, not the financing first, but the governance environment to let students be able to unleash their full potential, my guess is we will see the private sector flowing because the value add to business, to the communities, to government is quite high. And providing that kind of a platform is particularly important.
Thank you so much. Now, before we go to closing remarks, Paschal, you're going to get the last word here on this panel. We're talking, of course, about moving from discussion to delivery. Every single panel here is about that. Putting the lessons that they learned and the best practices shared into reality. What is the one partnership model the world now needs to take very seriously in this regard?
I just want to recognise the work the German government is doing with regard to the Global Skills Partnership. and the work the World Bank Group is now doing in making this come alive at a national level. And the reason why I think it is so important is that it has at the heart of us a recognition of the value of coordination, which again has been a common theme by all my colleagues here in this discussion. The need to recognise that the public sector and the private sector have complementary roles to play, and we can achieve far more if a good effort is made to coordinate both. So I just want to recognise the leadership of the government of Germany with regard to this at the moment, and to say that I think this is actually the most practical way of bringing to life the different concepts that we've discussed here this evening.
And I think those words are very well appreciated and well received by all representatives here from the German government, needless to say. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we talked a lot about partnerships, about multiple stakeholders in order to achieve fruitful and successful results. Now, when it comes to employment and migration, of course, one needs to look no further than the International Labour Organization in this particular regard. That brings with it the wealth of knowledge and experience in order to put all the lessons and suggestions into reality. And that's why it's only fitting that we're closing this wonderful panel with some remarks by the Director General of the ILO. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Gilbert Houngbo.
Excellencies, distinguished panel members. First of all, let me thank all of you for this quite very rich discussion, which highlighted a defining what I will consider in ILO a paradox in global labor markets. Too many people still lack access to decent work, while too many employers cannot find the workers and the skills they need. The ILO estimates that global unemployment will reach 186 million in 2026, roughly the same level as 2025. Yet, stable unemployment figures mask a broader challenge that we have, the global jobs gap, which is the number of people who want to work but cannot find unemployment, so higher than the traditional unemployment rate. So we project this number to reach 408 million people in 2026, while it's important also to remind ourselves that 2 billion workers remain in the informal employment status. These challenges are being intensified by the geopolitical instability, the demographic change that we just heard from the panel, and the rapid technological transformation that the CEO of SAP is embodying. Our task is clear: to ensure that people can access decent work while enterprises can find the skills they need to grow and to innovate. As labor markets become increasingly interconnected, labor migration is playing an ever more important role. In 2022, 168 million migrant workers participated in labor markets worldwide, contributing significantly to economic growth and resilience, as Vera explained to us. But our focus cannot simply be on the number of people who move. It must also be on the quality of the opportunities available to them. Skills recognition, fair recruitment, social protection, and respect for minimum basic rights at work are not only a matter of fairness, they are essential for more inclusive, productive, and resilient labor markets. Combined with investment in skills development and lifelong learning, they benefit workers, enterprises, and the economy in general alike. So when labor migration is well governed, it helps address labor shortages, creates opportunities for workers, and support development in both countries of origin as well as countries of destination. When governance is weak, migrants face exploitation, excessive recruitment fees, forced labor, and unsafe migration pathways. Looking ahead, demographic change and technological innovation demand stronger skills system and greater investment in lifelong learning. Without these investments, AI risks widening productivity and inequality gaps rather than helping us narrowing them. At the same time, labor migration policies must promote skills recognition. When you are talking about what is missing, is the skills recognition. They respond to labor market needs and to generate shared benefits across countries. Technology also creates new opportunities for skills development, and job matching. But skills alone are not enough. And I want to thank GIZ for pointing the human-centered approach. In a very rapidly changing world of work, all workers must enjoy fundamental rights, adequate protection, and meaningful social dialogue. The recently adopted ILO Convention 193, about 3 weeks ago, on the decent work in the platform economy is an important milestone. It did show the importance of, again, what the CEO of SAP was pointing out, the need for balancing the right balance between regulation and innovation. The two has to go side by side. Today's discussion has confirmed that no single actor can meet this challenge alone. The communiqué adopted today is an encouraging step forward toward stronger cooperation on employment, skill, and labor migration. And I want to recognize the work that the World Bank is doing in jobs, in quality jobs, with participation for so many of us. The ILO, through its unique tripartite structure, we stand ready to continue in this effort by investing in people through their working lives. We do believe that we can expect expanding access to decent work, advancing social justice, and strengthening the enterprises. Thank you so much.
Many thanks to Gilbert Houngbo, the Director General of the ILO, and to, ladies and gentlemen, employment, migration, and markets. I think you would all agree that we've had a very inspiring, very engaging and insightful discussion, thanks to our four formidable speakers who have shed some light on valuable lessons and the need to take these lessons forward, of course, in order to create the agenda for the next decade. Paschal, Donohoe, Klein, Vera, Songwe, and Ingrid-Gabriela Hoven, thank you so much, much appreciated. This is your applause, much appreciated.